My fiancée slept with my cousin before our engagement party. So I left town silently, and what happened next? Destroyed their entire social circle. Slept with my cousin before our engagement party. So I left town silently, and what happened next? Destroyed their entire social circle. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and I thought I'd finally found someone who understood me. After years of dating disasters and dead-end flings, meeting Lily felt like discovering a part of myself I didn't know was missing. She was bubbly, endlessly charming, the kind of person who could light up a room just by walking in. And God, she had this laugh that made everything else fade away. My worst days at work. We'd been together for 2 years, and every small moment felt like building a future I actually wanted to live. I've always been loyal, hardworking, the kind of guy who quietly holds everything together. And with Lily, I wanted to do more, covering small, shared expenses, planning dinners, and even coordinating what I imagined would be the perfect engagement party. It wasn't just about money. It was about proving that love, commitment, and trust could actually be simple. I wanted stability, a life where sacrifices mattered but weren't taken for granted. She didn't ask for much, but I insisted. I liked feeling needed, feeling useful. Like I was creating something real. Lily, of course, loved being social, flitting between friends, messaging her coworkers, posting stories online, always radiant. Sometimes she'd teased me with that playful smirk I adored, saying I was too predictable or boring in my routines. I'd laugh, brush it off, and go back to making sure she had everything she wanted. In my mind, being predictable was good. It meant reliability, trust, devotion. Little did I know, what I considered stability could be mistaken for weakness. We'd spend evenings planning the engagement party, laughing over themes and menus, imagining our friends and family celebrating us. I felt proud of the life we were building. Every careful decision, feeling like laying another brick in a foundation I thought was unshakable. But even as I hung fairy lights in our tiny apartment and prepped spreadsheets for the guest list, there was this flicker of something I couldn't name. Subtle unease I couldn't place. Lily's smile never faltered, but sometimes, it didn't reach her eyes, and I ignored it. The week after I finally popped the question felt like walking on air. Everyone knew we were engaged friends, coworkers, even distant family, and, for a moment, it felt like the world was rooting for us. I was buzzing with excitement, jotting down plans for the engagement party, thinking about flowers, music, and seating arrangements. I even asked Ethan, my cousin, to help with logistics, since he'd always been the organized one in the family. He was a good guy, or at least I thought so, but there was always this edge to him, a sly competitiveness that used to make me roll my eyes when we were kids. Lily, of course, was radiant when she met my extended family that weekend. She floated around, charming everyone, making them laugh, and I felt proud. I told myself it was normal, everyone liked Herb. Part of me noticed her. Lingering glances toward Ethan. Just a second too long when he laughed at something she said, a subtle tilt of her head that didn't go unnoticed. I brushed it off, thinking I was being paranoid. After all, she'd chosen me, hadn't she? Dinner with the family was warm, and I thought everything was perfect. My parents gushed about the engagement, my aunts cooed over party ideas, and Ethan was surprisingly helpful with table layouts and RSVPs, but there was a faint tension I couldn't shake. A friend whispered jokingly, "You two make quite the duo. Maybe too close," and I laughed it off, masking the pang in my chest. Lily just smiled, tossing me a playful wink that was supposed to be reassuring, but it felt like it was meant for someone else. That night, after everyone left, I sat on the balcony alone, drinking lukewarm coffee and listening to the city hum beneath me. The wind smelled faintly of rain, and I tried to focus on the excitement of the engagement party coming up, but my gut kept nudging me, whispering little doubts I didn't want to hear. I told myself I was imagining things. Trust was everything in love, wasn't it? Yet even as I flicked through my phone, double-checking guest lists and flower arrangements, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Subtly, silently, in a way I couldn't yet name. Planning the engagement party quickly became all-consuming. I spent nights scrolling through Pinterest boards, comparing flower arrangements, playlists, and seating charts, trying to make sure everything was perfect. Lily seemed thrilled, hopping between vendors, texting friends, and dropping hints about a fun night out with just a few close people before the big event. I didn't think much of it at first. I wanted her to be happy, and if that meant a small pre-party celebration, I was fine with it. But there was a flutter of unease every time she mentioned Ethan casually, as if his opinion mattered more than mine. I tried to focus on the details. Table linens in soft blush, candle arrangements that smelled like vanilla, and a playlist that mixed her favorite upbeat tracks with songs I secretly loved too. I wanted everything to feel intimate, warm, and personal, the kind of party where friends would laugh and family would gush over how perfect we were together. Lily hovered around me, brushing my arm, teasing that I was too meticulous and predictable again. I laughed it off, reminding myself that planning parties was supposed to be fun, not stressful. Yet the more I checked off lists, the more I noticed subtle oddities. Lily would step away for long phone calls, giggling quietly, her smile not quite matching the words she said. Ethan popped up more than usual, offering advice on centerpieces, suggesting music changes, lingering with Lily in ways that made my chest tighten. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe they were just being friendly. I trusted her, and I trusted family. That's what loyalty was, right? One evening, I caught a flash of her phone screen while she laughed at a message. My stomach twisted when I glimpsed Ethan's name. I didn't want to confront her then, not without proof, but the seed of doubt had planted itself firmly. Even the sound of the city below, normally soothing, felt oppressive, like it was pressing down on me, warning me that something was off as I laid out napkin arrangements and tried to ignore the gnawing anxiety. I couldn't shake the feeling that this perfect party might be hiding something I wasn't ready to see. The night before the engagement party was supposed to be calm, a quiet celebration of everything we'd worked toward. I'd spent the whole day finalizing the guest list, confirming, catering, and double-checking the playlist. But Lily had other ideas. She suggested a small pre-party with just a few friends and, of course, Ethan. I hesitated. "Are you sure it's a good idea?" I asked, trying to mask the knot forming in my stomach. She flashed that dazzling smile of hers and said, "Relax. It's just a little fun before the big day. You'll love it, trust me." I nodded, unwilling to ruin her excitement. The evening began lightheartedly. The room smelled of takeout and cheap wine, laughter echoing off the walls. Lily moved through the group like a social magnet, effortlessly drawing people in. I tried to focus on the familiar comfort of our friends' jokes and stories, but I kept catching her looking at Ethan in ways that made my chest tighten. At first, I chalked it up to my imagination, a trick of nerves before such an important celebration. Hours passed, and I noticed their conversations becoming more private. I'd glance over, only to catch fleeting smirks or quiet chuckles that didn't include me. "Everything okay?" I asked once, trying to sound casual. Lily waved it off. "Yeah, just talking about old memories." But her eyes flickered away, and I felt the tiniest shiver of unease run down my spine. The air in the apartment shifted subtly to warm, too tense, filled with unspoken words and laughter that didn't reach everyone. I busied myself with rearranging glasses, trying to ignore the creeping feeling that something had changed, that this night wasn't just harmless fun. Even the faint smell of rain outside, usually comforting, seemed heavy tonight, pressing in like a warning. By the time I excused myself to grab a bottle of water, I realized I was noticing far too many small signs, tiny things that didn't add up. My gut kept whispering, "Watch closely, pay attention. Something's off," and I had no idea just how right that warning would be. I should have trusted my gut sooner. That night, after I returned from the kitchen with a bottle of water, I noticed Lily and Ethan whispering in the corner, their heads close, faces lit by the dim glow of the fairy lights. At first, I tried to tell myself it was innocent, just friends sharing a joke, but something about the way she laughed, that soft, intimate laugh, made my stomach twist. I edged closer, pretending to adjust the music, and that's when I saw it, the texts flashing on her phone screen, Ethan's name bold at the top, and words I wasn't meant to read. I froze. "Wait, what's this?" I muttered under my breath, though no one could hear. The messages were casual, almost playful at first, then crossed the line flirtations I couldn't ignore. My heart pounded in my ears. The apartment suddenly too warm, too close, too suffocating. I wanted to confront her, to yell, to demand an explanation, but I couldn't. I didn't have proof, and I was terrified of hearing her lie straight to my face. Instead, I sat on the edge of the couch, pretending to scroll through my phone, stomach knotting tighter with every laugh and glance between them. Lily noticed me sitting quietly. "Hey, everything okay?" she asked, her tone light, almost teasing. I forced a laugh. "Yeah, just tired from planning." Inside, I was screaming. The worst part was the disbelief, the betrayal I couldn't reconcile. I trusted her. I had given my heart, my time, my energy, even my finances, believing that love meant loyalty. And here, in front of me, it was slipping through my fingers, hidden behind giggles and screens. I tried to push it aside, telling myself I was overreacting, that maybe it was nothing. But the knot in my chest wouldn't loosen. And for the first time in our relationship, doubt clawed at me relentlessly. And in that moment, as the party hummed around me, I realized something terrifying. The engagement I'd dreamed about might never happen. I should have seen it coming. But nothing could have prepared me for the truth. That night, after everyone had gone, I stayed in the living room under the pretense of finishing party cleanup. My phone buzzed with a notification, and curiosity, a desperate, painful curiosity, pulled me toward it. I hesitated, hands trembling, then opened Lily's messages. And there it was. Photos, Ethan and Lily, together. In our apartment, just hours before the engagement party, I felt my chest cave in, a physical pain that left me momentarily gasping. My mind refused to process. If this wasn't possible. She was the person I trusted most in the world. He was my cousin. How could they? The betrayal was so complete, so intimate, that I almost couldn't breathe. I sank onto the couch, the world tilting sideways, the room spinning with disbelief. The faint hum of the city outside became unbearable, each distant car horn echoing like a drum in my chest. I tried to confront her, but the words caught in my throat. I imagined the confrontation, shouting, pleading. Tersai couldn't handle it. Instead, I made a decision that felt like both surrender and survival. I couldn't face them tonight. I couldn't face anyone. So I did what felt impossible. I left. Quietly, silently, packed a bag, grabbed my essentials, and slipped out into the rain-soaked streets without a word. My heart pounding with anger and heartbreak. As I walked away, every memory of our 2 years together twisted in my mind, the laughter, the intimacy, the promises, all now tainted by deceit. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was surgical. They had planned this, executed it, and didn't even consider the wreckage they'd leave behind. I didn't know where I was going, only that I needed distance, clarity, and space to process the devastation. My engagement, my dreams of a perfect life, everything I thought I had built had crumbled in an instant. And yet, as the rain soaked through my jacket and the city lights blurred into streaks, a single thought emerged, sharp and cold. They're going to regret this. I didn't go home that night. I wandered through the city, rain soaking through my jacket, the streets empty except for the occasional car splashing through puddles. Every step felt surreal, like I was moving through someone else's life. My mind kept replaying the photos, their faces close, laughing, intimate. It wasn't just betrayal, it was a calculated, deliberate act. And the thought made my chest tighten with a mix of rage and disbelief. I found myself in a small diner, the smell of coffee and fried eggs, oddly grounding. I sat in a corner booth, hands wrapped around a steaming mug, trying to slow my racing thoughts. I thought about Lily, how I'd trusted her, how I'd imagined a future with her, how I'd been blindsided while thinking everything was fine. I thought about Ethan, my cousin, someone I'd known my entire life, who had crossed every boundary without a second thought. It felt like the floor had been ripped from under me, leaving me suspended in a void of anger and sorrow. I replayed every moment, every little smile, every teasing comment she'd made about me being predictable. Had it all been a setup, a game? My hands shook as I realized how blind I'd been, how completely I believed in the life we were building together. But somewhere in that despair, a seed of clarity began to grow. I wasn't going to lose myself to their betrayal. I wasn't going to crumble silently. I spent the night walking, thinking, observing. I started noticing patterned, subtle things about Lily and Ethan's social circle, the way they whispered, the lies they told to protect themselves. It was like a puzzle pieces scattered around me, waiting for me to put them together. And with each realization, my anger transformed into a cold, deliberate patience. By dawn, soaked and exhausted, I knew one thing. I wasn't going to confront them head on. Not yet. I was going to watch. I was going to gather the truth. And when the time came, they would face the consequences of what they'd done. I stayed out of their lives for a few days, moving quietly in the background, observing from a distance. I didn't contact anyone, not Lily, not Ethan, not a single friend. I needed to understand the scope of what I'd been thrown into. It wasn't enough to know they'd betrayed me. I wanted the whole picture. I started paying attention to their social circle, scanning public posts, casual comments, little slips in conversations. Every whisper, every boast, every tiny lie became a thread I could pull. It didn't take long to realize how much they'd manipulated the people around them. Lily had spun stories about me being distant or controlling to anyone who would listen, painting me as the villain while she played the innocent victim. Ethan, predictably, had exaggerated his helpfulness, portraying himself as supportive while subtly undermining my reputation. I watched friends and acquaintances repeat their narratives, unknowingly reinforcing a web of deception. It hurt, knowing how easily people had been swayed, but it also fueled a sharp clarity. This wasn't just about betrayal, it was about exposing the truth. I began documenting everything: the texts I had, the photos, the timelines, the inconsistencies. Each piece of evidence was another brick in the foundation of what I was going to build. Not a confrontation, not a meltdown, but a calculated, undeniable reckoning. I even noticed cracks I hadn't expected. A few of their friends weren't as loyal as they seemed. They whispered about Lily's lies, Ethan's manipulations, the growing tension in their social group. That was my opening. It told me that exposing them didn't require chaos, it required precision, patience, and timing. By the end of the week, I had a clear picture. They weren't just cheating on me, they'd been lying, scheming, and covering up every detail to protect themselves and maintain their image. And for the first time since seeing those photos, I felt a sense of control returning. I wasn't just the victim anymore. I was the observer, the planner, and soon, the quiet hand that would unravel everything they thought they'd gotten away with, even as I gathered evidence and planned silently. There were moments when despair hit me like a wave. I couldn't fight. One evening, I found myself scrolling through social media, and there they were, Lily and Ethan, posting selfies, laughing together, seemingly carefree, as if nothing had happened. My chest tightened so badly, I felt like I couldn't breathe. Every happy, carefree laugh of theirs was a dagger, reminding me that my life, my trust, my love, had been tossed aside while they flaunted it to the world. I wanted to scream at the screen, to send the photos, to expose everything right then and there. But I couldn't. Part of me, a fragile, aching part, wanted to crawl into bed and disappear, to pretend the betrayal hadn't happened, to rewind time and stop ever trusting them. I felt utterly alone. Friends who used to be neutral were now subtly siding with Lily. The ones I thought might understand my pain, brushing it off, or laughing at her stories. Even family seemed to shrug. Unconsciously influenced by the narratives Lily and Ethan had spun, that night I walked the streets, rain soaking through my jacket, city lights blurring in the puddles below. I kept asking myself, was I naive? Did I deserve this? Every instinct told me I'd been blindsided, and it hurt to accept the truth. My hands shook, my head throbbed, and for a long moment, I wondered if I'd ever feel safe trusting anyone again. But amid the hopelessness, a spark lingered, a cold, sharp resolve that cut through the anguish. I realized that no amount of sorrow or self-pity would undo what they had done. If I wanted justice, if I wanted to reclaim control over my life and expose the full truth, I had to channel the pain, not let it swallow me. So I made a vow to myself. Standing alone in the wet streets, the city humming quietly around me, I would not react in anger blindly. I would wait. I would plan, and when the time came, they would face the consequences of every lie, every betrayal, every secret they thought I hadn't noticed. I didn't act immediately. Instead, I watched. I compiled everything: texts, photos, timelines, and even little slips from their friends that hinted at their lies. Each piece of evidence was another thread, and I started weaving them into a tapestry no one could ignore. I knew this had to be precise. One wrong move, one hint of panic, and it could all backfire. But the more I reviewed it, the more I realized how careless they'd been, how confidently they'd lied, and how much their little world depended on secrecy. I began to reach out anonymously, subtly planting evidence in places I knew would reach the right people. A photo here, a message there, just enough to spark doubt. Friends started asking questions, small, hesitant inquiries that quickly grew louder. Their perfect image began to crack. Lily's innocent smiles and Ethan's smug confidence started to falter under whispers they hadn't anticipated. The best part was watching them scramble, trying to control a narrative that was no longer theirs. I didn't confront them. I didn't rage at them. I stayed in the shadows, letting the truth speak louder than any words I could throw at them. People started connecting the dots, realizing the inconsistencies, the contradictions, the hidden stories behind the carefully curated social media posts. It was intoxicating, not in a cruel way, but in the clarity of justice unfolding. Every lie they had told was now exposed, not by me yelling or posting publicly, but by their own actions, documented and undeniable. The friends who had once supported them silently turned away, seeing the reality they had ignored by the time the first confrontations happened. I was miles away, sitting quietly in my new apartment, listening to the distant hum of notifications and shocked messages from their social circle. I didn't have to raise my voice. I didn't have to fight. The walls they had built around their lies were crumbling, and all I had done was wait, watch, and let the evidence breathe. By the time I checked in discreetly online, the fallout was already underway. Lily and Ethan's social circle was unraveling in ways I hadn't fully anticipated. Friends who once laughed at my paranoia were now questioning everything. People were comparing timelines, whispering about inconsistencies, and suddenly, the carefully curated image they had presented to the world was shattered. Every lie, every hidden message, every betrayal came to light. And it wasn't just embarrassing, it was devastating. I watched as Lily tried to spin the narrative again, posting vague, dramatic stories about misunderstandings and betrayal, hoping someone would side with her. But no one did. Her closest friends, the ones she counted on to defend her, were already questioning her honesty. Ethan tried to step in, smooth over the cracks, but the evidence was too thick, the pattern too clear. Every word he said only highlighted the lies he had told. The messages and photos I had collected circulated subtly at first, shared among friends, as did anyone else notice this. Whispers. By the end of the week, their entire social reputation had collapsed. People who once celebrated them now confronted them openly. Friendships disintegrated. Alliances shifted. And the couple who thought they were untouchable were left scrambling in confusion and panic. I stayed distant, quiet, watching from afar. There was no gloating, no dramatic reveal from me, just the satisfying slow burn of truth surfacing, unstoppable and inevitable. I didn't need anyone to thank me. I didn't need applause. The exposure was enough. For the first time in weeks, I felt a strange mix of relief and closure. I wasn't celebrating revenge, was witnessing justice. Every deceitful smile, every calculated lie, every betrayal had finally met its consequences. And the best part, I had done it silently, without lowering myself to anger or public confrontation. After the chaos settled, I finally allowed myself to breathe. The social circle that had once seemed untouchable was fractured. Friends drifting, alliances broken, and Lily and Ethan were left exposed. Stripped of the facade they had so carefully curated, I didn't gloat. I didn't call or message. I watched from a distance, feeling a calm settle over me that I hadn't felt in months. It wasn't about winning. It was about reclaiming my peace, my dignity, my life. I spent the following weeks focusing on myself, slowly rebuilding the parts of me that had been bruised by betrayal. I walked in the park at sunrise, feeling the chill in the air on my face, and for the first time in a long time, I smiled without hesitation. I laughed again at small, trivial things, letting the joy seep back in. Every step, every breath, was a reminder that I could heal without revenge. Being loud or messy, it could be quiet, calculated, and deeply satisfying. Friends reached out. Noticing my absence, but not knowing the full story, I shared pieces selectively, carefully, only with those I trusted. Each conversation reinforced the lesson I'd learned. Loyalty and honesty are rare, but the truth always surfaces. I no longer felt the weight of their deceit pressing down on me. I had reclaimed my narrative, and in that calm, I realized the most important thing. The power wasn't in exposing them publicly, nor in humiliating them. It was in surviving, in thriving, in moving forward, stronger and wiser. I was no longer the person who had been blindsided, left hurt, and gasping in disbelief. I was the one who had watched, learned, and emerged whole. As I sipped my coffee, listening to the hum of the city and the faint rustle of leaves outside my window, I smiled softly and whispered to myself, "I'm free," and in that moment, it was true.